Hi, I'm Bridie Shepherd, and on the Eco Show today I'm on Gumbaynggirr country. I'm on the coast at the moment, but soon I'll be heading into the hinterland. There I'll be learning about wildlife corridors that are being managed by dogs and fire. Let's check it out. We are on a very important ridgeline in New South Wales that runs from the Great Dividing Range and the Dorrigo Plateau all the way down to the coast. You can literally see and hear the connection between the mountains and the ocean. This area is home to resident populations of koala, but also many more species that move between the Great Dividing Range and the coastal forests across the different seasons. So it's a key migratory highway for Australian natives. The Great Eastern Ranges has partnered with WWF Australia to deliver the Cores, Corridors and Koalas project. The partnership was formed in response to the unprecedented 2019 and 2020 bushfires to restore the health and resilience of habitats for koalas and other forest-dependent native animals. The Coffs Coast hinterland is one of 6 priority regions in the Great Eastern Ranges, with Delegia Biodiversity Alliance partners, traditional custodians and one exceptional dog leading the project in this area. And we have come to visit on a very special day, as all project partners are gathering on Gumbaynggirr country to celebrate the successes so far and undertake cultural burns. So we are starting the day with an acknowledgement of country and a few words from Auntie Yvette.
It's just such a pleasure walking through country and seeing the positive changes, seeing the benefits of cultural burning, and how our little ones can see what we're doing today to preserve our culture, and more importantly, develop an understanding how better to manage our country to avoid future disasters such as fire and floods that we've experienced in New South Wales. We've been through a hell of a lot of issues and challenges over the last couple of years, and these are progressive steps. If we don't implement change, then how do you prevent some of those disasters from occurring? And we are the custodians of this land for so many thousands of years. We've looked after this land, and I just want to thank everybody again today.
We just had a really wonderful welcome to country and met the whole crew who are behind the wonderful work that's happening here to restore this corridor to its former glory. The Great Eastern Ranges is a not-for-profit working to reconnect landscapes across Eastern Australia for wildlife and people. I'm meeting up with Executive Director Gary Howling to learn more. So, can you define what a corridor is? Different patches of land that you're trying to almost stitch together these pieces of land so that animals can migrate up and down them.
That's correct. A corridor is essentially an area of land through which wildlife is able to move. It can comprise different types of corridor connections. So some wildlife are not as able to move across open spaces, so they actually need physically intact connections. It might be along river watercourses or intact stretches of bush, like this particular spur line that runs up into the Great Divide itself. Other species are able to hop across the landscape from patches using stepping stones across the landscape. So they're much more able to get across fragmented urban and regional areas, such as we see in the wider landscape. This particular area that we're in just outside of Maelstrom today is really important, supporting the movement of a range of forest species that really depend on intact connections.
So that movement can be broken up by things like freeways, suburban developments, sort of urban landscapes, is that right?
Correct. Since European settlement, the whole of Eastern Australia has really been carved up by a whole range of different land uses, infrastructure barriers, roads, railway networks, townships and the like, as well as agricultural and industrial areas. Each of those different types of land use causes wildlife to get constrained into smaller and smaller patches. The work that Great Eastern Ranges is doing, including working with people such as the Gumbaynggirr Nation here in this particular landscape, is very much about helping to link up those areas again.
This tropical, subtropical, temperate convergence zone contains a unique diversity and complexity. It is home to 102 threatened animal species and a number of species that move altitudinally between the ranges and the coastal forest. I didn't realise there were so many different migratory species in Australia, but I guess for a long time they haven't actually been able to sort of successfully complete that journey up and down.
Wildlife migration in Australia is a lot more subtle and a lot more varied than we see in other parts of the world. So because Australia has a very boom-bust type of seasonal cycles, there's a degree of similarity year to year, but just how wet it is, where particular plants are flowering can change from year to year. So quite oftentimes our native species are moving through different parts of the landscape depending on what resources are appearing there, dependent on what the particular seasonal conditions are actually undertaking.
So because there's a lot of specialised knowledge of the local area that's really important to the work you do, how do you partner with local organisations?
So in this particular area with the Gumbaynggirr people, they've been working for some time with the Geelong Biodiversity Alliance, a group that's been partnering with Great Eastern Ranges over the last 10 years to be able to help this landscape connect to the bigger picture across Eastern Australia.
And it's been great seeing everyone coming together today. There's so many people here and so many people working on this project. It's really, really exciting.
You get a real sense of collaboration, and to be able to achieve conservation into the future, it's really going to require a lot more of people working together to achieve as much as possible, relying on each other, relying on each other's respective strengths and skills. And you get a real sense of that here today with the group of people that have come together.
Thanks, Gary.
Pleasure.
Part of the land management in this area involves reintroducing traditional practices. First Nations peoples have been managing the Australian landscape with cultural burns for thousands of years. Matthew Smith is going to talk me through the practice. Thank you for having us on this beautiful land. Can you tell me where we currently are? We're in like a very burnt out landscape.
Yeah, well, we just put this cultural fire in yesterday because this forest oak country was just calling for it. It was the only thing that would burn yesterday, and it just was all contained within this very spot right here out at Milestone, right out here on Gumbaynggirr country.
So you burned all of this just yesterday?
Yeah.
It's still like a little bit smoky and it smells amazing.
Yeah, it's the native scents of the bush, you can say. yeah. So yeah, a lot of those scents and smoke and just the minerals of the ashes that come off from burning, the heat that's applied to it. It does a lot of good stuff for native seeds that are in the seed bank. So yeah, all that minerals, they act as like a fast-acting mineral to just feed them seeds and get them the right conditions to come up. Some seeds might be more dormant than others that haven't sprouted for a long time, and it's been waiting for fire to be reapplied to country. So when you start to put this in, you start to see species that you haven't seen for a long while, and probably since the old people started, stopped burning here,
So can you tell me what we're going to be doing today, or what you're going to be doing today?
Yeah, well, we're going to demonstrate a bit of a cultural burn, and we've got areas set already, a good 2 to 3 hectares worth of burning to do down here. So we've got a bit of a Soteria, a bit of invasive weed that's come in undergrowth here with the forest oak and some of the coastal Banksia and woodland areas that we've got down further there. And when you walk further, there's still some remnants of the old patches that give us clues of what it looked like before. So we've got kangaroo grass and bladie mixed in some areas further southwest of this area. This area had been previously sand mined at some point, so hence why the invasive weeds are just taking over, and something does need to come in to retain the soil. So the weeds, serve a purpose for a while, but then comes a point where we've got to come in, step in, get them natives going again, and cultural fire mixed with conventional land management, perfect mixture to get it coming again. So yeah, we've planned that fire. Our hope is for that kangaroo grass seed, the bladie grass seed, to drop back into that freshly burnt country and take over where the Soteria grasses come in. So
you can probably see just behind me, Matt and his team are about to start the cultural burn. So there's some crackling fire, all the guys are out here and they're just lighting the fire. We've been told that we need to stay a little bit further back from everything, but I think it's a very controlled burn. It's not going to be terribly hot, it's not going to go terribly far. but we're just going to wait and see what happens. So it's not just about trying to get rid of invasive species, it's about activating old seeds with fire and giving the ecosystem what it needs, which is fire.
Anything to do with fire, people thinking about their houses, their property straight away, life in general being lost. With cultural burning, that's just one of the pillars that we view equally to ecology and cultural heritage. So we've got a lot of cultural heritage sites of our old people that are out here. We've also got some quite diverse and sensitive ecology to think about before we start putting fire in. But we also got to consider the new infrastructure like fences and houses, structures, signs, that we're not burning them down in the process of applying traditional cultural land management practices. So yeah, which is why we can, in this modern day era, we're combining cultural land management practices and principles with conventional land management to get that optimal result for our current living day conditions.
So basically we're just looking for the driest patches with the most fuel, get all that fuel off the ground and open everything up. And as you can see with the wind, it's all coming up along here, so if we just burn it along, the wind should take it through and we'll get all this fuel off the ground. As you can see, it gets really dry. So let's get underneath, light up the dry stuff, and that should catch up. And
Feeling the heat, it sounds incredible. It's crackling, it's burning, but everything's very controlled. We're getting really, really close to it, and it's very, very safe here. And there's so much attention to everything that's going on. There's attention to the wind that's happening. There's attention to all the cultural aspects. Everyone's working together, and it's just a really beautiful process. The smell is absolutely incredible. The fire's really coming up quite quickly, and it's eating up all the fuel, and it's dying down relatively quickly. So at no stages it's really getting out of control. It's very satisfying as well to watch. Can you tell me how you integrate culture into the burning practices?
Yeah, well, it all starts with cultural protocols, our respect for country, acknowledgement for country, and we acknowledge that a lot of our knowledge of country is with our elders, our old people. So before we think about applying any kind of land management practice to country, we're always in conversation with an elder from a community that represents that local area, so that we can start to receive information about what's the cultural history about this place. Is there any ecology linked relationships with that old history and the ecology? We're looking at the pre-European, the post-European and the ecology all at the same time.
It's just so exciting. Fire is everywhere. You keep looking down and there's just patches of fire that's coming up in the grass, and you don't really know where you're walking, but you're walking on fire. And it's just so beautiful. The sound is just so snap, crackle, pop. What's going to happen now?
So it's approaching that molasses grass up there.
Yeah.
So molasses has got a lot of oil within it. So it will release that oil, a bit of extra oil compared to the other vegetation types around it. So if it takes off, don't be alarmed, it's just that vegetation type. It'll start to calm itself down once it goes through there.
So when you're doing a cultural burn, how do you stop the fire from getting out of control?
It all comes down to the type of country. But before we think about putting fire on the ground, like say reading the landscape is really important. What the localised risks are in that landscape. If we've got a hot burn vegetation type over there, we've got a cold burn here. What's the dew doing? What the humidity is doing on the day? What the wind levels are? Today is just absolutely perfect for a bit of burning because we've got winds not exceeding 4 or 5 kilometres an hour, So looking at all those weather conditions in the land, it's just the state of the land, the moisture that's in the ground. Yeah, all those aspects, including the cultural stories as well. So we always keep in mind our cultural stories because the land, like the fire, actually, sometimes you think it's going to go that way, but it wants to go this way. It's got its own story, so we respect and acknowledge that too, that we'll let the fire do its thing because the land knows best And sometimes we think we know, we go to do it, doesn't work, but the land will go, we'll send a sign, a stick will drop over there, or a bird will start going, come over this way, and we go over there and apply it there. So, you know, always being open-minded and just listening out for those signs, you know, from the land, from old people, just to let us know where those parts of the land require that treatment.
I'm amazed at how this fire lights so quickly and just as quickly fizzles out. It's truly incredible to be watching this ancient practice firsthand. I'm about to meet the furriest member of this project team, Max the wildlife scent detection dog, and his trusty handler Jack from Canines for Wildlife. Scent detection dogs are being used to assist with koala surveys across several sites in the ranges.
All right, I'm here with Jack and Max is running around. Max is going to help us detect different traces of koala behaviour. So Max is going to be looking for some scat. Max is super ready to get going, so I think we're just going to launch into it.
Oh, he's already started.
He's already started. All right, I think film the dog. Jack, can you tell me, what are you doing here? What's Max doing here?
Basically, I'm carrying the water and the tennis ball, and
Yeah.
he's doing all the work. So he's done so many hundreds of hours of koala searching now that he knows the job. So my job's basically just make sure he's checked every tree and that he's covering the search area effectively. And when he gets a reward or when he needs a break, then that's my job to decide when that's time and pick that up from him and sort that out. And once he makes a detection, which hopefully we'll see here soon, basically take a whole bunch of data, confirm that it is koala that he's found, and then we might take samples if it's good genetic material, or just basically taking GPS data and various records about the tree and what activity we might be seeing. We usually allow them to create their own indication behaviour, but for Max, he will have a change of behaviour, which is one of the things I look for as a handler first. So he will course back and forward and start to get a lot tighter, and you can see he becomes more frantic, his tail wags faster. So they're all of the early signs. But when he's actually found something nuzzling the ground around where the scat is, and then usually he'll lay down and look back to me, and that's his final indication.
Incredible. Do you think that you might have the best job in the world?
Second to his job.
Yes.
Definitely.
Aww.
It's such a privilege.
He's just so happy.
Mm-hmm. It's his absolute favourite thing to do, and this is the kind of dog that in a pet home would be heavily medicated or possibly put down, often sent back to a pound because they can't be handled in a home situation, and because they've been bred to work like this. And so being able to put him out here in a job that he loves and that really excels at is a really privilege, and it's great to see him so happy.
What kind of a dog is he?
He's a working line English Springer Spaniel.
So they're obviously a good dog for this.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a good nose on you, Max.
The breeding and the training of these dogs is really specific, and so there's a lot of behaviours that we specifically train so that they're safe with wildlife when we're working in places like this, because we are conservation minded and that's what we're trying to do. So there's a big difference between one of these dogs and a pet dog that's trained to find things with their nose. There is quite a distinction there, and there's a lot of work that goes into making them safe for wildlife and them safe from wildlife as well, snakes and other things like that.
Mm. Yeah, because most national parks, if not all national parks, you can't have
Exactly.
dogs
So
in, right?
we have to seek special permits to be allowed into national parks, and they only provide those to us because they can see the level of training and the behaviour of the dogs.
So did Max just find some scat?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah. So This is koala scat. Looks a little bit funny because it's been stuck together, but it's probably a couple of weeks old, a little bit less. Yeah.
So Max has got such a good nose that it doesn't really matter how deteriorated the specimen is, he's still able to detect it.
As a matter of fact, he's too good. So he indicates on them when they're just a green fuzz and there's nothing left to detect. So there's nothing left for me to see, I suppose. And so unfortunately he doesn't get a reward in those situations, but we focus on these, but yeah.
And so when he actually does find scat, what do you do to reward him?
Tennis ball.
Tennis ball, okay, so you're throwing the tennis ball.
That's his reward. So we'll have a bridge, which
Yeah.
for us is yes. That tells him that he's done the job, reward is coming, and then we'll throw the tennis ball. We allow them all to pick their own reward. So for him, it's just tennis ball. Tennis ball is life.
Oh, it is a way of life, isn't it?
There are so many people and groups working with animals and the natural elements to restore this wildlife corridor, and another way to do this is with revegetation. I'm about to speak to Justin Cooper, a project officer from the Jaligia Biodiversity Alliance. Fittingly, Jaligia is the Gumbaynggirr word for a tree, and Justin is leading the revegetation side of things.
We planted here about 6 months ago before the rains came, and we had a lot of rain, the grasses grew back. But fortunately some of the trees are growing as well, which is really good. But essentially what we're trying to do, we've got really good remnant vegetation down here. This area is highly degraded from previous mining activities, sand mining. So to complement our vegetation up in the ridge area, the eucalypt vegetation, we need to improve the condition of the vegetation down here on the coastal area as well.
It seems like it's going pretty well at the moment, is that right?
It is, yeah. So, you know, the results are really exciting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens after the burn. We've put in a few plots so we can get some data to see what native species recruit, particularly in the swamp oak forest area. We're hoping that, you know, that there'll be a recruitment of the sandpaper figs and the swamp paper bark as well. So.
And really all the cultural burning that's happening now is creating sort of a perfect landscape to plant all these species. Is that right?
It is, but that's the interesting part, because cost-wise, it would cost a lot to plant it. You know, it's a big area, but if we can use fire and those traditional methods, we can do broad-scale restoration work using fire. So it's really exciting to see what the result is down here.
So that biodiversity is really important for migrating species. So that's
Yes.
mainly what you're working on?
We call it sort of co-beneficial. Even though this project's for a koala-themed project, other species benefit from the trees, so they feed on those trees even though the koalas feed on them as well. So yeah, multiple benefits for multiple species, migratory species.
Broadleaf paperbark is an important winter food source for many of the migratory species travelling through this region, specifically microbats and flying foxes. They fly in from all over the state in the winter to get a feed here. Part of this region does have a small but established forest of them, but Justin is working to grow more.
So this is looking like beautiful landscape here. Is this what you're trying to achieve?
Yes, it is. This is swamp oak forest. It's a threatened ecological community. So with the work we're trying to do over in the grassy area is to get some of those key species in there. We've planted some of those, but now we're using fire. So the traditional owners ranger team, the Durunda, they're doing their cultural burn, and we think that will trigger some release of seed and start to regenerate that area, and we'll end up with these swamp paperbarks.
They're so beautiful. I'm walking in amongst the ashes of a cultural burn, and it's truly been a unique experience to be here. It's been amazing meeting the people who are working on the wildlife corridor along the east coast of Australia. From cultural burns to really cute dogs, it's just been a really fascinating day. See you next time on the Eco Show. Absolutely covered in leeches. It's good to know that all different creatures are part of a thriving ecosystem.